Hi guys, another defining games video, and this time I'm going to be talking about the games that defined the Sega Dreamcast. Starting with Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur, while it's not a Sega developed title, it's one of the games that forever be associated with the Dreamcast. It's an absolutely gorgeous game. The graphics on it for the time were amazing, and if you play it with a VGA cable, it's absolutely stunning. In my opinion, it lives up to games that are on the Xbox 360 and the PS3. The graphics are that good. The gameplay's in depth. There's plenty of combination moves. At the time, it was the best 3D fighter there is, and probably, in my opinion, it still is one of the best. It still holds up today. Soul Calibur 2 and 3 that were released afterwards, in my opinion, don't live up to that. It set a landmark for 3D fighters, which hasn't been matched since. An excellent game. And we'll talk about Shenmue, the Shenmue series. Shenmue is one of the most beautiful and revolutionary titles on the Dreamcast. It combined elements of adventure RPG, simulator and fighting games into an epic journey. The fighting elements of it I thought were really good. In the game, you're a fictional character that someone's killed your dad and you're out to find out how and why. A £20 million budget at the time was for these games, and it really shows it. At the time, it was amazing. It still stands up to today, gameplay wise. Graphics probably are starting to show their age, but still, simply stunning game, beautiful. The atmosphere in Shenmue is really amazing. Each building, sidewalk, table, chairs, interactive. It really, what frustrates me about games that come out these days, like Call of Duty and anything like that. You can't interact with your surroundings that well. And with this game, you can interact with anything you could see. However, Shenmue isn't for everyone. It's especially appealing for people with relatively short attention span. It requires patience. And Shenmue 1 especially, the first 2 discs, each one of them is a 4-disc game. Takes time to set up the story, and you actually get into the proper action until the 3rd and 4th discs. But even still, it's a beautiful game, huge game, both of them. You must try this. It really is a stunning game. Next up, if I can find it, we have Jet Set Radio. If there was one word to describe Sega's best work in the 90s, it was unique, and this game is unique. Sega enjoyed a number of development houses that didn't do their best creative games and that broke the barriers of traditional genres, and Jet Set Radio is a perfect example of that. It's an unforgettable cel-shading graphics. The first game to use this sort of graphic system. It's a game based around you gradually recruit your members of your group, and you basically go around a city, which is a city loosely based on Tokyo, spray painting your logo about. It doesn't sound that good, but it really is a really addictive game, and a stunning game at that. Adrenaline pumping action. It's a very unique premise, which made Jet Set Radio one of the Dreamcast defining titles. Next up, we have Crazy Taxi. Recently bought the PS2 version of this, but still think this is the best version. The arcade. This was one of the main reasons I jumped on the Dreamcast bandwagon back in the day. Just because I played the arcade version, and this stood up even better in my opinion. It has been cloned a few times since its release, but Crazy Taxi is a thrill that it can't be found anywhere else. The music on it's great. Bands like The Offspring are really good. But if you haven't played it, I'm sure most of you have, but it's a game where basically you're a taxi driver and you have to get the people there in the fastest way possible. Loads of mini games on it, loads of little side games, which makes this a must-have for any Dreamcast owner, and one of the Dreamcast defining titles. Next up, we have the Sonic Adventure series. I've only actually got Sonic Adventure 1 at the moment, but I will get 2 eventually, and I have played 2 back in the day. at the time, when you think of 3D games and what the N64 had to offer, games like Mario and Ocarina of Time, while they're brilliant games in their own right, graphics-wise, Sonic Adventure was a cut above. It at the time, it was one of the only games I played that really wowed me graphically. It was something that the gamers dreamt about at the time. I think Sonic Adventure 2 is definitely focuses on the action sort of elements more. But Sonic Adventure 1 was a brilliant game in its own right. I don't think the Sonic Adventure games quite captured the feel of the old 2D Sonic games. They're still really enjoyable games. And a must-have for any Sonic or Dreamcast owner. Sonic or Dreamcast fan. Really great games. Next up, we have Virtua Fighter VTB. It was probably the least collaborated title fighting series, which is with a cult following. Virtua Fighter is a deep and polished 3D fighter. In my opinion, not as good as Soul Calibur, but still just as good. A quickly moving game. It's It's not as eye-catching as Soul Calibur or Dead or Alive 2, but still a really good game graphically. I believe the actual fighting mechanics of the game are better than Soul Calibur, but still a defining title and one of the best fighting games you can get on the Dreamcast. Now, one of my personal favourites, really unique game, Choo Choo Rocket. It was actually the first popular console to make it onto the online world, believe it or not, which in my opinion shows that the Dreamcast was well ahead of its time on the online. Games that nobody played, but you showed it's a unique puzzle game that should not be overlooked either with its single player or multiplayer features. While the single multiplayer was great, I think the multiplayer definitely the first game I played multiplayer wise, which really got everyone great for parties or was having gatherings, because it was just a really enjoyable game multiplayer wise. It's a true classic. I think it was a launch game for the Dreamcast actually. Just a really fun game to play. I must have. You pick it up for not a lot either these days, so definitely worth a try. Now we have a selection of 2D fighters: Capcom vs SNK, Guilty Gear X. There's many other 2D fighters on the Dreamcast, but this is just a couple. Sure, the Dreamcast had plenty of 3D fighters, and you've seen a couple already in this video. The real strength was the 2D fighter arena. It teamed with the official arcade stick, if anyone's used that for the Dreamcast, which is really good. The Dreamcast fighters it was a dream console for fighters. Capcom and SNK both supported the Dreamcast to the fullest extent. My personal favourite is Capcom vs SNK, just for the fighting mechanics of the game. The graphics I thought were really good. But the Dreamcast has abundance of 2D fighters, all of them. I haven't played one hard 2D fighter. I'm sure someone else might correct me on the video, but still, 2D fighters are the way to go. Now for, as you may know, my favourite shooter, shoot 'em up on the ever, Ikaruga. It was a Japanese-only release. It's the sequel to the Sega Saturn's Radiant Silvergun. Ikaruga does not disappoint. Its graphics are unbelievable. The gameplay is not like any other shooter ever. Brilliant with the VGA cable. The graphics are stunning. Again, better than any shooter I've ever seen. Even to this day, I haven't seen anything that's got just as good a graphics as this. I remember that this game was really hyped. I don't know why it didn't come over to the tour of Europe and America. A really brilliant game. As far as shooters go, you can get quite generic sometimes, but this is a really unique game, and a must-have for any shooter fan. And finally, one of my favourite games on the Dreamcast is Rez. Now, back in the day when you thought of 3D, Rez personified that perfectly. It was the best 3D game you can get, and even with the Xbox 360 arcade release, it's still just as good. If anyone hasn't got a Dreamcast and they want to play Rez, definitely get that. I played it, it's just as good. It's a rail shooter. You take control of an online avatar and you're shooting through the screen. Enemies come from all sides, up and down. I won't go into the story too much, but graphically it's really good. The interactive music on the game is excellent. Basically the music follows you as you shoot, and the faster you shoot, the faster the music goes. I think it's a really good concept. It's quite a short game. You complete it in a couple of hours if you're pretty good at it, or 3 or 4 hours if you're not like me. But it's a really unique game, probably the most unique game ever, really. There was a PAL release for it, but I've got the Japanese version because it's a lot cheaper. But once the lock-on, there's some systems like the lock-on system were introduced with Res. Really revolutionary game, graphics-wise, gameplay-wise, and a must-have for any Dreamcast owner. And that's my defining games for the Dreamcast. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.